Claire Monroe had never been late for anything in her life, especially not tonight. The elevator doors of the Lexington Club opened with a quiet chime, revealing the glittering rooftop of Manhattan's most exclusive venue. The sky was painted in hues of gold and navy as the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting the city in a soft twilight glow. Elegant chandeliers hung beneath glass canopies, and waiters in black ties floated among guests like silent dancers, offering glasses of vintage champagne and oysters on crystal platters. Claire stepped out into the gathering, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The crimson silk gown she wore clung to her curves, sleek and understated, chosen by Preston's stylist. She had wanted to wear green, the emerald dress that made her feel powerful, but Preston said red looked better on camera. Everything, lately, was about the camera. She smoothed her dress, forcing a smile as she scanned the crowd. Preston Hayes, her fiancé, at least for another hour, was supposed to meet her here. He hadn't answered her calls. Claire spotted some familiar faces, donors, political strategists, socialites she had only seen in tabloid headlines. This wasn't a celebration. It was a spectacle. She felt out of place. "Claire," a voice called. It was Mrs. Delaney, the wife of the state attorney general, already 2 flutes of champagne in. "You look stunning, dear." "Preston's a lucky man." Claire returned the compliment, thanked her, and smiled through the small talk. The longer she stood there, the more a strange knot formed in her stomach. She felt watched. Then, she saw him. Preston stood near the balcony, framed by the Manhattan skyline, but he wasn't alone. His hand rested gently on the lower back of Aubrey Carlyle, daughter of Senator Carlyle and media darling of the East Coast. Aubrey was laughing, one hand delicately stroking Preston's tie, the other holding a glass of wine. Claire froze. Guests had begun to turn their heads, whispers trailing in hushed excitement. Phones were raised. Someone turned up the background music. Her heart started pounding. Preston saw her. He smiled, but not the smile she knew. It was the practiced, political smile he used during interviews, during debates. The smile that meant nothing. He took Aubrey's hand and walked toward the center of the rooftop, where a small podium had been set up. A hush fell over the crowd. "Good evening, everyone," Preston began, his voice clear, calculated. "Thank you for being here tonight. I've always believed that politics isn't about perfection. It's about choices." Claire stepped closer, confusion rising. "And tonight," he continued, "I want to share a personal choice I've made, one that reflects where I'm headed, both as a man and as a leader." He turned to Aubrey, took her hand again, and then, before Claire could blink, he dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Claire's ears began to ring. "Aubrey Carlyle, will you marry me?" Claire's breath caught. The air was ripped from her lungs. She stood in front of hundreds of people, colleagues, clients, influencers, watching the man she was supposed to marry propose to another woman. Aubrey said yes. Applause erupted. Claire didn't move. Preston stood, kissed Aubrey's cheek, then turned toward the crowd as if on cue. "I want to thank Claire Monroe for the time we shared," he said, addressing her directly, coldly. "She's a talented architect and a wonderful person, but our relationship was a stepping stone for both of us. I wish her the best." It was a rehearsed death sentence. The cameras swung toward Claire, her face flushed with heat, her hands trembling. She turned and walked. Fast. Past the waiters, past the whispers, past the champagne and clinking glasses. Down the marble hallway. Into the elevator. Out into the cold, bustling noise of Fifth Avenue. She didn't cry. Not yet. Claire wandered for blocks, her heels catching in sidewalk cracks, the city blurring around her. At some point, she stopped beneath the awning of a closed bakery. Her phone buzzed endlessly, calls from friends, messages from coworkers, alerts from social media. Someone had already posted a video. It had 100,000 views. She dropped her phone into her clutch, sat down on the steps, pulled her coat tight, and finally, she cried. "Rough night." The voice came from the shadows. She looked up. A man in a tailored charcoal suit leaned against the lamppost. Not from the party. Too still, too unreadable. "Go away," she said, not bothering to wipe her tears. "Claire Monroe," he said, not asking. "Architect. Formerly with Lang and Pierce. Currently unemployed as of an hour ago." She blinked. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who watches very carefully." He stepped forward. Claire could now see his face, sharp jawline, olive skin, black hair slicked back with brutal precision. Eyes like steel, hands in his pockets like he didn't have a care in the world. I don't know what kind of stalker. I'm not a stalker, he cut in. I'm Julian Moretti. The name hit like thunder. Moretti, one of the most whispered names on Wall Street and beyond. The Moretti family ran construction, shipping, and, some said, the darker industries nobody dared name. Mafia adjacent. Untouchable. She stood. What do you want? I watched you get humiliated in front of every major power player in New York. That's not something I enjoy seeing. She narrowed her eyes. You feel sorry for me? No. I see opportunity. He pulled a card from his pocket and held it out. She didn't take it. Marry me. She laughed, bitter. You're insane. 6 months, he said. In public, you'll be my wife. In private, we'll live in separate wings. You'll attend events, project stability. I'll pay you $500,000. And I'll make sure Preston Hayes never sees another ballot in his life. Claire stared at him, stunned. I don't need saving, she whispered. I'm not saving you. I'm offering you power. She didn't respond. He placed the card on the step beside her and turned to leave. I'll give you 48 hours. Why me? She asked suddenly. He paused. Look back. Because I only make deals with people who've lost everything. They're the only ones who have something real to gain. Then he disappeared into the night. Claire stood alone, the city humming around her. Somewhere in the distance, laughter floated down from the rooftop of the Lexington Club. She looked at the card, then up at the sky, and for the first time in her life, she considered saying yes. Claire stared at the business card for a long time. Julian Moretti. No phone number. Just a single address embossed in gold lettering on jet black cardstock. 233, Broome Street, Soho. The next morning, her inbox was flooded. Sponsors had pulled out from upcoming projects. Her firm emailed an impersonal termination of association letter. Calls from her mother went unanswered. By noon, #Claire Monroe was trending on Twitter with clips of her red-faced humiliation at the Lexington Club. Opinion pieces speculated on her motives, her past, her future. Preston and Aubrey's engagement photo had already made the front page of the New York Daily. Claire hadn't moved from her apartment since 6 a.m. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. By 7 p.m., she was dressed in black slacks, a plain blouse, and a long coat. She stood outside 233 Broome Street under a drizzle that smelled of winter. The building was nondescript, its glass doors tinted, its security camera blinking red. She pressed the intercom. A woman's voice answered. Name? Claire Monroe. Pause. He's expecting you. Top floor. Claire stepped into a silent elevator that rose like a whisper. The top floor opened into a private foyer, and beyond it, a glass-walled penthouse that looked more like an art gallery than a home. Julian Moretti stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out over the Soho skyline, a glass of something amber in his hand. I didn't think you'd come, he said without turning. I didn't think I would either, she replied. He finally looked at her. Are you ready to hear the terms? No small talk first. Julian smiled faintly. We're past pleasantries. He walked to a sleek table, picked up a folder, and handed it to her. Claire opened it. A legally binding marriage contract. 6 months. Non-disclosure clauses. Public appearances. Social events. Weekly check-ins with a PR team. No physical intimacy required. $500,000 to be transferred in installments. Final payment upon successful completion. What happens if I walk away early, she asked. You forfeit everything. And Preston Hayes wins. Claire closed the folder. Why me? I already told you, he said. Because you have something to gain. And because Preston played dirty. I don't like people who play dirty unless it's me. I'm not some pawn for your vendetta. You wouldn't be here if you didn't want revenge. She looked at him, long and hard. And what do you get out of this? Julian sipped his drink. The appearance of stability. My business interests are expanding into legitimate sectors. Government contracts. Political leverage. A wife softens the edges. Why not hire an actress? They're too good at pretending. Claire said nothing for a while. She stared at the skyline beyond the glass. I want something added, she said finally. At the end of 6 months, if I choose to walk away, you make sure Preston's campaign is over. Permanently. Julian's gaze didn't shift. Agreed. She held out her hand. Then we have a deal. His grip was firm, cold, and absolute. We have a deal. 2 weeks later, Claire Monroe returned to society as Claire Moretti. Her move into Julian's penthouse was quiet, handled by a team of assistants who signed NDAs longer than the contract itself. Her wardrobe was replaced with designer pieces tailored to perfection. Her hair was restyled by someone who had worked on magazine covers. A personal trainer arrived every morning at 6. A publicist briefed her on speaking cues, media etiquette, and Julian's business alliances. Every detail of her public life was curated with surgical precision. But privately, Julian kept his distance. They lived in the same space, but occupied different worlds. He was up at dawn, gone before breakfast, and rarely home before midnight. When he read quietly, alone, or took phone calls behind closed doors. He never asked her personal questions, never lingered in shared spaces, never crossed boundaries. Until the night of the Manhattan Gala. Claire had been briefed. Wear the navy gown, enter with Julian, smile on cue, stand to his left during speeches, say nothing controversial. The event was at the Met, filled with billionaires, diplomats, tech moguls, and politicians. She descended the marble staircase beside Julian, his hand resting lightly on her back. The cameras clicked. The crowd turned. And just like that, Claire Monroe became Claire Moretti in the eyes of the city. Preston was there. He stood by the champagne tower with Aubrey, surrounded by press. He looked up and saw them. His smile faltered. Julian led her directly past them. Julian Moretti, Preston said, stepping forward, extending a hand. Long time. Julian shook it without warmth. Haze. His eyes shifted to Claire. You clean up well, Claire. Claire smiled, cold and polished. So do backstabbers, apparently. Preston's jaw tensed. Aubrey laughed nervously. Julian stepped in. My wife doesn't engage with cowards. Excuse us. They walked on, leaving a stunned silence behind. That night, as they returned to the penthouse, Claire didn't speak. Neither did Julian. He poured a drink. She stood by the fireplace, still wearing her gown. You handled yourself well, he said. Claire turned to him. That was the first time anyone's ever defended me like that. He raised an eyebrow. You've clearly been surrounded by the wrong people. She crossed the room slowly, stood beside him. Why are you like this? Like what? So controlled. So untouchable. Julian stared at his glass. Because people who touch me get hurt. She didn't press further. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of things neither was ready to say. The next morning, Claire woke to a small velvet box on her nightstand. Inside was a pair of emerald earrings. No note. No explanation. She wore them anyway. Claire's days blurred into a calculated rhythm of luxury and silence. From the outside, she was thriving. Her name returned to the guest lists that had recently erased her. Magazines speculated about her meteoric comeback and fairy tale marriage to the most elusive man in New York. Her publicist managed interviews, stylists maintained perfection, and every appearance with Julian fed the growing myth that she had landed on her feet, stronger and more desirable than ever. But behind the penthouse doors, the truth was different. Julian remained distant. He was courteous, always respectful, but rarely present. Their shared moments were few and brief. Gala entrances, public dinners, the occasional glass of wine in the same room before midnight swallowed him into strategy calls and encrypted emails. Claire didn't ask questions. She wasn't supposed to. Until the morning, everything cracked. She was halfway through her coffee when Sienna Moretti appeared in the kitchen, dressed in all black, her phone in one hand and a folder in the other. We need to talk, Sienna said, sharp and to the point. Claire blinked. Good morning to you too. Julian's not home. This won't take long. Claire set her cup down. What is it? Sienna placed the folder on the marble island. We had a data breach. Claire opened it. Inside were internal memos, floor plans, encrypted files, most marked with Julian's company insignia. A red line circled an email. It was sent from Claire.Monroe at langpierceprojects.com to a known affiliate of Marco DeLucci, the Miami-based criminal rival to the Morettis. What is this? Claire asked, her voice low. You tell me, Sienna replied. Because either your account was hacked, or you're the dumbest double agent I've ever seen. Claire's breath caught. I haven't used that work email in months. It should have been deactivated. It wasn't. Someone used it. They accessed files from this penthouse's IP. Claire's stomach dropped. You think I don't think, Sienna said, leaning closer. I verify. And right now, Nothing verifies that you're innocent. Claire stepped back. You can't be serious. Julian knows I wouldn't do this. Does he? Sienna's gaze was ice. Because the last woman he trusted cost him more than you can imagine. Claire's eyes narrowed. You're talking about his first wife. Don't, Sienna snapped. You don't get to say her name. Silence fell. I'll talk to Julian, Claire said finally. He already knows. Claire's pulse surged. What? He got the report this morning. Without another word, Sienna turned and walked out, leaving the folder behind like a loaded weapon. Claire sat for hours, unmoving, her mind racing through every possibility. Could someone have used her laptop? Had Preston somehow accessed her credentials? The last time she'd seen him in person was at the Met Gala. Was that the window he needed? By nightfall, the silence from Julian was deafening. At 10:23 p.m., he entered the penthouse. Claire was waiting. We need to talk, she said. He looked at her, tired, guarded. I've had a long day. I know. Because of me. Julian didn't respond. Claire stepped forward. I didn't send that email. You know I didn't. I know the evidence, he replied. And right now it points to you. Then your evidence is wrong. Julian walked past her, poured a drink. Say something, she demanded. I trusted you, he said quietly. That was already more than I should have done. Claire felt her throat tighten. You think I betrayed you? I think you came into my life when everything was vulnerable, he said. I gave you access. I made you untouchable. And now my most sensitive project is compromised, and the breach leads back to you. Claire stepped back as if struck. So I'm just a liability now. You were always a risk. She swallowed hard. You don't believe me. I want to, he said. But wanting doesn't change facts. Claire felt something inside her fracture. You know what hurts more than your suspicion? She whispered. The fact that you didn't even ask me before assuming the worst. Julian said nothing. I'm leaving, she said. He looked at her, a shadow crossing his expression. You break the contract, you forfeit the payout. I don't care about the money. She turned and walked toward the bedroom. Packed a small bag. Called a car. Julian didn't follow. As she waited in the lobby, the doorman handed her a sealed envelope. No return address, he said. It arrived an hour ago. Said it was urgent. Claire opened it. Inside were 2 photographs. The first showed her standing beside Julian at the Met Gala. The second showed Preston Hayes shaking hands with a man Claire didn't recognize. She turned it over. Written in slanted, precise handwriting. Trust is expensive. Ask yourself who benefits from the breach. The car arrived. Claire rode in silence, the photos in her lap. She checked into a boutique hotel in Tribeca under her mother's maiden name. Alone, she stared at the ceiling until sleep finally came. The next morning, she called an old friend at Lang & Pierce. Asked for access logs. It took some convincing, but eventually she got them. The email sent from her old account wasn't sent from her IP. It was spoofed. A phantom message rerouted through 6 VPNs. Someone wanted her blamed. That someone knew Julian's systems. And Preston knew just enough to make it happen. She returned to the penthouse that evening. Julian wasn't there. Sienna was. I want to prove something, Claire said. Sienna raised an eyebrow. You have 30 seconds. Claire laid the photos on the table. You're wrong about me. Sienna looked down. Her expression didn't change. But Claire saw the flicker, the recognition in her eyes. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Sienna's jaw tightened. This changes nothing. It changes everything. Someone is setting me up. Maybe Preston. Maybe someone else. But you're looking in the wrong direction. Julian entered mid-conversation. His coat was still on, but his face was tight with fatigue. What's going on? He asked. Sienna walked to him, handed over the photos. Said nothing. He studied them, then looked at Claire. This doesn't clear you, he said. No, she said. But it makes you question the narrative. Julian held her gaze for a long time. Pack your things, he said finally. You're not staying here. But I'll find out the truth. Claire nodded. She didn't argue. As she walked away, Sienna followed. You think if you clear your name, everything goes back to the way it was? Sienna asked. No, Claire replied. Because it never was what I thought it was. She closed the door behind her. In the silence that followed, Julian stared at the photographs again. In the corner of one, almost hidden by shadows, stood a third figure. Marco DeLucci, watching everything. The wind whipped across the East River as Julian stared out from the penthouse balcony, the night cold and bitter. Below, the lights of Manhattan shimmered like fireflies in a jar, beautiful, contained, and fragile. He hadn't slept. The photographs Claire had left on the table remained etched in his mind. Marco Delucci, the man Julian thought had been neutralized 2 years ago. The man responsible for a half-dozen betrayals, the collapse of a global shipping deal, and the death of people Julian couldn't afford to mourn. The fact that Marco had been at the Met Gala, watching, meant one thing. He was back, and he had chosen Claire as the crack in the armor. Julian didn't know what scared him more, the idea that Claire had been played, or that she hadn't. The door behind him opened. Sienna stepped out, coat draped over her shoulders, a tumbler of scotch in her hand. "You've been out here for hours," she said. "I know." She joined him at the railing, the city stretching before them like a chessboard. "She's not the threat," Sienna said quietly. "You know that now. She might still be the key." "To what?" "To getting to me," Julian replied. They stood in silence. "You know what I regret?" Sienna said. "I regret not stopping her sooner." Julian turned. "Claire." "No. Olivia." His chest tightened. Sienna rarely spoke her name. Julian almost never did. "She was beautiful," Sienna continued, eyes on the river. "And manipulative. And reckless. You saw love. I saw a power grab. I loved her. She loved what you gave her," Sienna replied, not unkindly. "And it almost got you killed." Julian's jaw clenched. "That's over." "No," she said. "It isn't. Because Claire is waking up every ghost you buried, including the one I helped kill." Julian turned slowly. "What did you just say?" Sienna didn't flinch. "She was going to sell us out. To Delucci. I intercepted the deal. I sent the warning. I made the call that put her in that car." Julian stared at her. For a long time, neither of them moved. "You told me it was an accident," he said, his voice low. "It was," Sienna said. "Just not the way you think. You lied. I protected you. You murdered my wife." Sienna stepped forward. "She was going to destroy you. You think Delucci came for her out of nowhere? She was feeding him everything, financials, trade routes, contracts. The car bomb wasn't my plan, but I lit the fuse. And I'd do it again." Julian looked away, pain spreading across his face like a fracture in glass. "And now you're afraid Claire will do the same," he said. "I'm afraid she'll get you killed before she even knows what side she's on." He didn't respond. The truth hung between them, heavy and irreversible. Sienna placed the glass on the railing and left. Julian stayed outside until dawn. Claire sat in a coffee shop in Tribeca, stirring her cup long after it had gone cold. She hadn't spoken to Julian in 3 days. She didn't expect to. She wasn't sure she even wanted to. She had spent every waking hour digging. Preston's campaign had received 2 anonymous donations, both routed through shell companies tied to Delucci's network. The dates matched the day of the gala and the breach. She printed the evidence, bound it, and labeled it. But what she found next changed everything. An archived news story buried beneath court records, blogs, and gossip sites. Olivia Moretti, 29, died in a car bombing outside a boutique hotel in Venice. No suspects, no arrests, no motive. But the deeper Claire looked, the more she saw the pattern. Olivia's movements, calls, connections. She'd been in contact with a man linked to Delucci. Days before her death, Claire returned to the penthouse late that evening. The security let her in without hesitation. Julian was in the study, back turned, watching a video feed of the gala. He didn't look up when she entered. "I know about Olivia," she said. He didn't move. She was working with Delucci. Still silence. And Sienna made the call that killed her. Now he turned. His eyes were bloodshot. "Hello. You did your homework," he said. "I had to." He walked to the bar, poured a drink, didn't offer her one. "I loved her," he said, "even when she betrayed me. That's how I knew I couldn't love again." "Not really." Claire stepped closer. "Then why marry me?" "Because you weren't supposed to matter." She flinched. "You were a shield. A symbol. A distraction. And now?" she asked. Julian looked at her. "Now I'm afraid you're something else. Something I can't control. And that makes you dangerous." Claire took out the folder from her bag, placed it on the desk. "That's everything I found on Preston. The money trail. The digital fingerprints. He's the leak. He's been working with Delucci the whole time." Julian opened the folder. "Read the first page. Then the second." He closed it. And for the first time in days, he looked at her not with suspicion, but with something close to trust. "Why are you still here?" he asked. "Because walking away doesn't fix anything." Julian exhaled. "You should hate me." "I don't," Claire said. "But I don't forgive you either." "Fair." Claire turned to leave. Julian stopped her. "Claire." She looked back. I didn't know about Sienna. Not really. Not until last night. But I'm done living in the shadows of ghosts. If you're still willing, if there's a way forward, I want it to be real. Claire studied him. The man who had offered her a contract, control, and vengeance. The man who had buried his heart beneath concrete walls. Now those walls had cracks. She walked back to him, close enough to hear him breathe. This has to be my choice, she said. No more deals. No more transactions. Julian nodded. No more lies, she added. He held her gaze. No more lies. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware of the pact being made inside a fortress built on grief. But someone else was watching. In a darkened surveillance room 3 blocks away, a monitor blinked. A man lit a cigarette, leaned back in his chair, and smiled at the feed of Julian and Claire. She's in, he said. Behind him, Preston stepped out of the shadows. And she doesn't even know what game she's playing. The night of the Lexington Club Gala arrived quietly, with a sky so still it felt rehearsed. Claire stood in front of the full-length mirror in Julian's penthouse, dressed in emerald green silk. The color clung to her like it had been waiting for this moment, rich and unapologetic, a perfect match to the fire in her eyes. The same dress she had wanted to wear on the night everything fell apart. The same color Preston told her wasn't media-friendly. Tonight, she wore it for herself. Julian entered without knocking. He froze when he saw her. Green suits you, he said. She turned slightly, her earrings catching the light. Took me long enough to wear it. He crossed the room and adjusted the strap on her shoulder with a gentleness that surprised them both. Ready? Are you? He nodded. As I'll ever be. The Lexington Club looked exactly the same. Same rooftop terrace, same skyline, same soft jazz drifting from hidden speakers. But tonight, Claire didn't feel like an outsider. She didn't feel small or desperate or invisible. Tonight, she returned not as the woman who had been humiliated, but as the woman who had survived it. They arrived as a unit, hand in hand, photographers snapping away. Whispers rippled through the crowd, speculation blooming like smoke. Claire kept her chin high. Julian walked beside her like a man at peace with the storm he'd built. Preston was already there. He stood near the center of the terrace, Aubrey Carlyle nowhere in sight. His tailored suit was impeccable, his smile rehearsed. But Claire saw it, the tension in his jaw, the faint lines beneath his eyes. He had lost something. Control, maybe. Or pride. He stepped toward them. Julian. Claire. Julian didn't offer his hand. Preston. Claire's voice was calm. I see the polls are shifting. Preston's smile faltered. Politics is a long game. Not when the FBI starts asking questions about untraceable donations, she said. Julian raised an eyebrow. You should have been more careful with your paper trail. Preston's expression hardened. This isn't over. Claire leaned in slightly. No, it's just your beginning. The kind where you learn what it feels like to lose everything you thought you deserved. She turned away without waiting for a response. The night continued. Speeches were made. Deals whispered over glasses of champagne. But Claire and Julian moved through it all with effortless command. Together, they were untouchable. Until Sienna appeared at Claire's side. He's watching, she said under her breath. Claire didn't need to ask who. She turned, scanned the room, and saw a man in a gray suit near the bar. Clean-shaven. Unremarkable. But familiar. The same man from the photograph. The surveillance feed. Delucci's messenger. Claire excused herself from Julian and walked toward him. Slowly. Deliberately. Didn't expect to see you here, she said. The man smiled. You've made quite the impression. What do you want? He sipped his drink. Just delivering a message. I'm not part of your game. Of course you are. You always were. She tilted her head. Tell Marco if he wants something. He can speak to me himself. The man's smile deepened. You're already speaking to him. Claire blinked. It wasn't possible. You? The man placed his empty glass on the bar. Preston was just the bait. You're the prize. I'm not for sale. No, he said. You're something better. You're the wedge. Between Julian and Sienna. Between past and future. Between power and conscience. Claire took a step back. You think I'm going to betray him? I think you already have. Before she could respond, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd as if he'd never been there. Claire returned to Julian, silent and pale. What did he say? He asked. Everything and nothing, she replied. Julian studied her. You believe him? I believe he believes it. Later that evening, when most of the guests had gone and the rooftop was quieter, Julian led Claire to the balcony where Preston had humiliated her months ago. I've spent years building walls, he said. Walls made of money, strategy, and fear. And somehow, you walked right through them. Claire turned to him. I didn't come to tear you down. No, he said. But you made me want to build something new. He pulled a small box from his jacket. Opened it. Inside was a ring, white gold, set with an emerald the color of her dress. No contracts. No clauses. No conditions, he said. Just one question. Claire felt something in her chest loosen. Yes, she whispered. But only if you promise never to protect me from the truth again. Julian slid the ring onto her finger. I promise. They kissed beneath the stars, the city humming below them. For a moment, it felt like peace. 3 days later, a package arrived at Claire's office. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Her and Julian, taken from across the street. Unposed. Unaware. On the back, written in the same careful handwriting from before. Nothing is ever accidental. You weren't chosen by chance. You were made for this. No signature. No explanation. Just a warning. Claire stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. We need to talk, she said into the line. Something's coming.